The Last Night, Franz von Vera's Impossible Escape. Location: England, Canada, United States, Mexico, Germany. He was shot down over England, captured, and sent to a maximum security POW camp. He escaped. They caught him. He escaped again. They sent him to Canada, a country with thousands of miles of wilderness and no border with Germany. He escaped anyway. This is the true story of Franz von Vera, the only German POW to successfully escape from Allied custody and return to Germany during World War II. And he did it by stealing an airplane. The Messerschmitt Bf 109 spiraled out of control, black smoke pouring from its engine. The date was September 5, 1940, and the Battle of Britain was at its height. Hundreds of German aircraft were attacking England daily, trying to destroy the Royal Air Force and prepare for invasion. Flying the damaged fighter was Oberlieutenant Franz von Vera, a 26-year-old Luftwaffe pilot with 13 confirmed kills and a reputation for outrageous confidence. He'd painted a cartoon devil on his aircraft's fuselage and told his squadron mates that he'd personally shoot down Winston Churchill if he got the chance. Now he was falling out of the sky over Kent, and his war was about to get very complicated. Von Vera fought with the controls, trying to level out the aircraft, but it was hopeless. The engine was dead, the fuel lines severed by bullets from an RAF Hurricane. He had maybe 30 seconds before he hit the ground. He pulled the canopy release and bailed out at 400 feet, dangerously low. His parachute deployed with a violent jerk just moments before he crashed through the roof of a greenhouse in the village of Love's Farm, Marden. He lay in the wreckage, covered in broken glass and tomato plants, staring up at the English sky. For a moment, there was silence. Then he heard voices, brutish voices, shouting and running toward him. Von Vera did something that would define his entire POW experience. He started planning his escape before his captors even reached him. Within minutes, he was surrounded by British Home Guard, local militia, armed with rifles and a great deal of suspicion. They zip-tied his hands and marched him at gunpoint to the local police station where he was formally taken into custody as a prisoner of war. The interrogation began immediately. RAF intelligence officers wanted to know everything about German tactics, aircraft capabilities, and future plans. Von Vera told them absolutely nothing useful. Instead, he launched into outrageous lies designed to confuse and misdirect. He claimed to be the Baron von Vera. He wasn't. His family had no title. He said he was a personal friend of Hermann Goering. Doubtful. He insisted his aircraft had been shot down by ground fire, not by RAF fighters, because he wanted to deny the British a confirmed victory. The intelligence officers quickly realized they were dealing with an unusual prisoner. "This one's going to be trouble," noted Squadron Leader Hawkins in his report. "Arrogant, uncooperative, and displays an alarming lack of concern about his situation. Recommend maximum security facility." Von Vera was sent to the London Cage, a preliminary interrogation center, then transferred to Grisdale Hall in the Lake District, a requisition mansion converted into a POW camp for Luftwaffe officers. Grisdale Hall housed some of Germany's top fighter pilots. These men maintained strict military discipline even in captivity, organizing themselves along Luftwaffe lines with a senior officer as commandant. They wore their uniforms, saluted, and considered it their duty to attempt escape. Von Vera fit right in. Within days of arrival, he was planning his first escape attempt. The plan was simple. Dig a tunnel from the basement under the perimeter fence. Dozens of prisoners volunteered to help. They stole spoons and improvised tools, dug during exercise periods, and hid the excavated dirt in their pockets to scatter around the grounds. But British intelligence had informants inside the camp. The tunnel was discovered before completion. Von Vera and 5 co-conspirators were punished with 2 weeks in solitary confinement. Most prisoners would have given up. Von Vera was just getting warmed up. His second attempt came in December 1940. This time he decided to try the boldest plan yet. He would walk out of the camp disguised as a British officer, claim he was conducting an inspection, and drive away in a military vehicle.
He'd observed that British officers occasionally visited the camp and security was relatively relaxed for them. If he could forge the right uniform and papers, he might be able to bluff his way out. For weeks, von Vera and his co-conspirators worked on the disguise. The unpicked wool from RAF uniforms, prisoners were allowed to keep some items of their flying gear and re-knit it into something resembling a British Army officer's tunic. They created rank ignition from tin cans and painted them to look like genuine pips. They forged identity documents using stolen paper and copied official stamps. The transformation was remarkable. When von Vera put on the complete disguise, he looked like a British captain, right down to a fake mustache made from human hair. On December 17, 1940, during a shift change when security was distracted, von Vera put on his disguise and simply walked toward the main gate. He carried forged papers and projected an air of irritated authority, an officer annoyed at having to conduct another tedious inspection. "Captain Harrington, War Office," he announced to the gate guard in perfect English. Von Vera spoke excellent English with a posh accent he'd learned specifically for escapes. "I'm here to inspect your perimeter security. Bloody nuisance, but orders are orders." The guard looked at the papers, looked at von Vera, and made the decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. He saluted and opened the gate. Von Vera walked out of Grisdale Hall a free man. He made it almost 20 miles before a suspicious railway station master noticed that his uniform didn't quite fit right and called the military police. Von Vera was recaptured at gunpoint while trying to board a train to Liverpool. This time, the British had had enough. Von Vera was classified as an incorrigible escapee and transferred to maximum security. And since he'd proven too slippery for camps in England, they decided to send him to Canada, a country with thousands of miles of wilderness and no border with Germany.
In January 1941, von Vera was transported across the Atlantic on a ship carrying 600 German POWs. The voyage took 2 weeks through U-boat-infested waters, and von Vera spent the entire time planning his next escape. The Canadian POW camp was located in Bowmanville, Ontario, about 75 kilometers east of Toronto. It was a modern facility with high fences, guard towers, searchlights, and protocols designed specifically for high-risk prisoners. The Canadians had learned from British mistakes. Von Vera was assigned to a maximum security barracks under 24-hour surveillance. He was not allowed near the perimeter fence without escort. He was searched daily. His mail was censored. Every aspect of his life was controlled. But there was one thing the Canadians couldn't control. They had to transport prisoners occasionally. And that meant trains. On January 24, 1941, von Vera and a group of prisoners were being transferred to a different camp by rail. The prisoners were locked in a secure railway car guarded by Canadian soldiers with rifles. The train traveled through the frozen Ontario countryside, heading west. Von Vera had been studying the route during previous transports. He'd noted that the train passed through remote areas. He'd observed that the guards relaxed their vigilance during long stretches of rural travel. And he'd noticed something crucial. The train had to slow down significantly when approaching sharp curves. At 22:30 hours, as the train rounded a curve near Smiths Falls, Ontario, von Vera made his move. He'd loosened a window bolt during a previous transport and covered it with soap so it appeared intact. Now he quickly removed it, threw open the window, and jumped. The fall onto the frozen ground knocked the wind out of him. He rolled several times, came to a stop in a snowbank, and lay still, listening for signs of alarm. The train continued on for several minutes before guards noticed he was missing. By that time, von Vera was running through the woods. He had escaped again. But now he faced an even bigger problem. He was in rural Canada in January, wearing prison clothes with no food, no money, and no clear plan. The temperature was -20 Celsius. Search parties would be mobilized within hours. But Van Vera had one advantage: geography. He was only about 40 kilometers from the U.S. border, and America was still neutral in the war. If he could reach American soil, he couldn't be forcibly returned to Canada. He walked through the night, following the North Star, keeping to wooded areas to avoid detection. When dawn came, he hid in a barn and slept for a few hours. Then he continued walking. On his second night of freedom, nearly dead from hypothermia, he stumbled upon a railway track. He followed it, hoping it led south. After several kilometers, he saw lights in the distance. A railway station. The sign read, Ogdensburg, New York. He'd made it to America. Van Vera walked into the nearest police station and announced, "I am Oberleutnant Franz von Vera of the German Luftwaffe. I am a prisoner of war who has escaped from Canadian custody. I am requesting political asylum in the United States under international law." The American police were baffled. They'd never dealt with an escaped German POW before. They called the FBI. The FBI called the State Department. The State Department checked international law and confirmed, since Van Vera had reached U.S. territory voluntarily and America was neutral in the war, he couldn't be forcibly returned to Canada. The Canadians were furious. The British were embarrassed. But there was nothing they could do. Van Vera was held in American custody while diplomats argued about his status. He was treated as an internee rather than a prisoner, given comfortable accommodation, allowed visitors, and even permitted to give interviews to newspapers. American journalists loved him. He was charming, photogenic, and told outrageous stories about his escapes. Headlines across America proclaimed, "The German ace who escaped across a continent." For 6 weeks, Van Vera enjoyed celebrity status in New York while lawyers debated his fate. Then Germany intervened through diplomatic channels, requesting his return as a repatriation case. In April 1941, Van Vera was released to German custody. He traveled from New York to Mexico, then to Peru, then caught a ship across the Pacific to Japan, and finally took the Trans-Siberian Railway across Asia to Germany. He arrived home a hero. Hitler personally decorated him with the Knight's Cross. Goebbels' propaganda ministry featured him in newspapers and radio broadcasts as proof of German superiority and determination. Vera wrote a book about his escapes, which became a bestseller in Germany. He gave lectures to Luftwaffe pilots about escape tactics. He became one of the most famous figures in Germany. But Franz von Vera's luck was about to run out. On October 25, 1941, less than 7 months after his triumphant return, Van Vera took off on a routine patrol mission over the North Sea. His squadron was flying north of Holland, searching for British aircraft. At 11:47 hours, Van Vera radioed that he was experiencing engine trouble. His wingman saw him turn back toward base, losing altitude. Then the radio went silent. Franz von Vera was never seen again. Neither his body nor his aircraft were ever recovered. He was officially listed as missing in action, presumed dead. He was 27 years old. Historians speculate that his engine failed over the freezing North Sea, giving him no time to bail out or ditch successfully. Ironically, the man who'd survived 4 escapes, thousands of miles of travel, and every British and Canadian security measure, died in the same way as thousands of other pilots, a mechanical failure over cold water. But Franz van Vera's legend lived on. After the war, his story was featured in books and films. The 1957 British film, The One That Got Away, told his story, portraying him as a charismatic and determined officer who refused to accept defeat. His escapes raised serious questions about Allied POW security. Multiple investigations were launched. Procedures were tightened. Grisdale Hall was closed and converted to other uses. In 1999, British military historians released files showing that von Vera's escapes had inadvertently provided valuable intelligence.
His captured notes and letters revealed German tactical thinking, and his conversations with other prisoners, monitored by British intelligence, provided insights into Luftwaffe morale and organization. Today, von Vera is remembered as the only Axis POW to successfully escape from Canadian or American custody and return to his homeland during World War II. Out of tens of thousands of Axis prisoners held in North America, he was the only one who made it home. His story raises an interesting question. What drives someone to escape 4 times, knowing the odds are impossibly stacked against them? Von Vera himself answered this in an interview with an American journalist in 1941. "You ask why I kept trying to escape, even after I'd failed 3 times. The answer is simple. Because I'm a soldier. My duty didn't end when I was captured. My duty was to return to my unit and continue fighting. Every day I spent as a prisoner was a day I failed in that duty. So I had to keep trying. And I never stopped believing that eventually I would succeed." Whether you view Franz von Vera as a dedicated soldier fulfilling his duty, or simply a reckless adventurer addicted to escaping, his achievement is undeniable. He walked out of a maximum security camp disguised as a British officer. He jumped from a moving train in the middle of winter. He walked across the frozen Canadian wilderness to reach American soil. And he made it home. The last knight of the Luftwaffe, a man who treated war like a grand adventure and proved that sometimes, against all logic and probability, the impossible can actually be done. Just grain by grain, escape by escape, mile by mile.